The Carthan Unity Survey Ship Insights Wing dropped into normal space on the fringe of an uncharted star system, where 3 suns drifted lazily through a slow, looping orbital braid. The stars, old and amber gold, poured heat onto a solitary planet nestled within their narrow band of life. The planet, unnamed, was not on any known cartographic data or long-range survey logs. Even the deep census records from the precursor mapping era showed nothing but a phantom signal, an unexplored echo without coordinates. Commander Halvek stood behind the helm, his primary eyes flicking over sensor returns, while his lower set blinked irritably at the jump cycle residue still humming through the ship's coils. Stable orbit, oxygen, nitrogen atmosphere. 0 hostile emissions. Multiple artificial energy sources on the surface, reported Ensign Trawl. We're reading agriculture, weather manipulation, and multiple population clusters. Mid-level civilization at minimum. Unclaimed? Halvek asked. Unmarked, unnamed, undisturbed. Until now, he muttered, tail coiling thoughtfully. Prepare a contact team. Light diplomatic kit only. They descended 2 hours later. The shuttle eased into a wide plain where golden grass stretched in slow ripples beneath the wind. In the distance, stone structures rose out of the soil, blending seamlessly into the earth like they'd grown there, not been built. And walking among them, working fields, repairing roofs, or carrying woven baskets, were humans. Sarah Vell, the Unity's junior anthropo-analyst, stood in stunned silence just beyond the shuttle's ramp. The first humans they met wore practical robes, loosely cut, some adorned with etched patterns like star lines or seed spirals. They looked up, squinting not in fear but familiarity. "Welcome," said one of them, a middle-aged woman with sun-creased eyes. "We wondered when you'd come." The team stared. Commander Halvek stepped forward, voice carefully modulated. "This is Commander Halvek of the Carthan Unity Exploratory Mission Insights Wing. We are peaceful explorers. We were unaware this system was inhabited." "It wasn't for a time," said the woman, smiling. "But we are here now." "You're Terrans?" Sarah asked, hesitant. The woman tilted her head. "We are human, yes." "But how did you get here?" Halvek asked. "There are no records of colonization this far from Sol. No FTL jump routes, no trace of transmissions." The woman's answer was simple, her smile serene. "We didn't get here. We've always been here." The team exchanged looks. Halvek's mandibles clicked once, a Carthan gesture of polite skepticism. The Carthans quickly began their standard first contact process. Cultural linguistic alignments were completed within hours. The humans showed no signs of psychic shielding, latent aggression, or territorial behavior. They answered questions freely, toured the Unity scientists through their cities, and offered data willingly. Their society ran on clean energy, hyper-efficient recycling, and dense agricultural microgrids. They had no centralized government but exhibited high organizational cohesion. They used digital archives stored in crystalline structures. They spoke over 15 languages, but all were derived from ancient Terran dialects. And they seemed completely, utterly unfazed by alien visitors. Sarah spent her first night walking the outer perimeter of the settlement, scanning architecture and collecting acoustic recordings of human songs echoing from fireside circles. One structure in particular held her attention. A dome of white gold stone, latticed with an alloy she couldn't identify, positioned perfectly in line with the 3 suns' seasonal positions. It was clearly ancient, but its material bore no weathering. Inside she found what appeared to be a stellar map, but not a map of the current galactic configuration. This one showed stars that hadn't existed in those alignments for tens of thousands of years. The humans called the building the Hall of Returning Light. "We built that," a young man told her as she examined it, "a long time ago." "Who is we?" Sarah asked. "Us," he said, "and not us, but still us." The next day, Sarah presented her findings to Commander Halvek and the diplomatic committee. Her voice trembled not with fear but with something harder to name. Unmoored wonder. "There are elements in their cultural memory that don't make sense," she said. "References to events predating recorded galactic history. They have a consistent oral tradition about something called the Veiling, a period when knowledge was buried deliberately across the stars. And there are words, old words, rooted in languages we've only found on fossilized precursor tablets." Halvek stared at her. "Are you saying they predate galactic civilization?" "I'm saying, if they're descendants of a human colony, They're not just old, they're ancient. And if they're not a colony, then either someone made them to look like humans, or humanity has a history we never knew existed. The official report filed to Unity Command labeled the humans as a genetically pure Terran subgroup existing in isolation. Theories ranged from rogue expedition, temporal displacement, to precursor uplift scenario. None were confirmed. Meanwhile, the humans offered no resistance, no declarations, no claims. They hosted the Unity teams with warmth and quiet interest. One evening, Sarah sat with one of the elders beneath a half-dome of clear stone that glowed with a light it did not reflect. "You seem very untroubled by our arrival," she said. The elder, an old man with skin like aged paper and eyes sharp as stars, chuckled. "It's not that you found us," he said. "It's that you remembered how to see." Sarah said nothing. Somewhere in the grass behind them, a child laughed as they chased the wind. Overhead, 3 suns danced. 3 weeks after the Carthan Unity's initial contact, the first delegation of galactic archaeologists arrived. They came not from curiosity, but from contradiction. The reports sent by Insight's wing, ruins of unknown origin, cultural artifacts that predated known galactic cycles, and most damning of all, a consistent thread of human presence in places they could not have been, had unsettled academic institutions across 6 core worlds. If the findings were true, they risked undoing several thousand years of accepted chronology. So they sent experts, conservators from the Aldari vaults, xenoanthropologists from the Tamari Institute, and independent researchers with reputations built on cautious disbelief. They descended on the unnamed planet with quiet arrogance. They brought ground-penetrating scans, photonic slicers, and fusion dust dating tech. The humans welcomed them, offered tea, and pointed them toward the ruins buried beneath the hills. The first excavation took place under the northern ridgeline, where ancient stones jutted from the soil like bone. To their frustration, the ruins resisted standard analysis. Carbon layering gave conflicting timelines, oscillating wildly between estimates. Structural patterns showed knowledge of quantum stabilization techniques but were constructed with hand-carved stone. DNA samples returned one result with absolute certainty: human. No mutation, no deviation. Perfect match to Terran genetic baselines as preserved in Unity medical archives. "This site predates known Terran expansion by at least 40,000 years, muttered Dr. Hellick of the Aldari vaults. "It shouldn't exist." More ruins were uncovered. As the dig expanded, a pattern emerged. Impossibly old inscriptions written in a semiotic blend of early Terran glyphs and proto-galactic runes, thought to be unrelated. This time there was a symbol, a stylized seed encased within an eye. Sarah, still stationed on the planet, stood before the carving with her slate in hand. Her notes were beginning to read more like religious texts than scientific reports. She'd seen the symbol before, on a child's shawl, embroidered into the corner of a stone hearth, carved on the base of a farming plow. She asked a human craftsman what it meant. "It's the witness," he said, shrugging, as though explaining the color of the sky. "It remembers what we chose not to." "Who is we?" But the man only smiled and returned to his work. Across the galaxy, similar ruins, long classified as natural formations or pre-sapient anomalies, were re-examined. In almost every case, they were found to contain the same symbol, the witness, and beneath the stone, human mitochondrial residue. In one system, Aldari conservators discovered a subterranean city inside an asteroid shell, perfectly preserved. It contained statues, teaching scripts, and entire libraries, written in a human dialect that had never evolved on Earth. Sarah pushed for full access to Unity historical records. When blocked by protocol, she invoked emergency precedent as outlined in First Contact Doctrine. If present findings threatened the structural basis of historical understanding, data protection laws could be overridden. She found what she feared she would: buried references across hundreds of ancient texts to a race without name, form, or empire. The Silent Root, sometimes called the Old Flesh, sometimes the Star Tillers. In one case, the ones who lit the first dawn. No species remembered them clearly, but the myths were there, sewn into the bones of galactic folklore. Beings who walked with the earliest minds, who taught the shape of language and the function of tools, who appeared in crises and vanished before memory formed. In every account, they bore no banners, They made no demands, and in every account they resembled humans. Sarah presented her findings to Commander Halvek, whose tone had grown increasingly tight since the archaeologists arrived. "This could break us," he said quietly. "Not militarily, but ideologically. If humans were first and they ceded knowledge, then what are the rest of us?" Sarah didn't answer. A week later, the moon orbiting the unnamed planet became the site of the most significant find in galactic archaeological history. What had once been considered a collapsed lava tube was, in fact, a vault, shielded by carbon shell lattice, the kind used in high-level data containment during wartime protocol. The locks had no physical mechanism, only a symbol, the seed within the eye, engraved on a smooth, featureless surface. It opened for a human child. The structure inside was pristine, a domed chamber with crystalline walls, humming faintly with residual energy. At the center, a pedestal. On it, a cube of obsidian glass. The child picked it up and placed it on the floor. It activated. A projection filled the space, not just with light, but presence. A man, human by all visual markers, stood in the air, hands folded, eyes dim. He spoke slowly. His voice echoed without volume, as if it had been recorded in memory itself, not sound. "If you're hearing this, then we failed again, or perhaps you have found what we left behind on purpose. Either way, you have questions. We walked this galaxy long before the sky was full. We helped the stars grow. We shaped minds and seeded soil. But we are not gods, and in time we had nothing more to offer. So we let ourselves be forgotten. Not out of fear, not out of shame, but because our time had passed. Now you return to the garden we planted. Walk gently." The cube went dark. No further recordings were found. The room's light faded, but the air remained charged, as if the words hung in the vacuum long after they'd stopped speaking. The Unity delegation went silent. Some took ill. Others returned to their ships and did not speak for days. Back on the surface, Sarah sat again with the Elder. She asked the question directly this time. "Why did your people leave all this behind? The ruins, the stars, the history?" The Elder looked up at the sky. The three suns had just crossed into alignment. The grasses shimmered gold and red and green. "We didn't leave it behind," he said. "We gave it away." "Why?" "Because you can't hold everything and still let others grow." The transport glided silently through the upper thermosphere, its hull gleaming beneath the braided light of the three suns. Sarah sat alone near the observation bay, staring down at the blue and gold planet below. The rest of the Unity delegation had left, some recalled by higher command, others quietly resigning their posts. Reports had been filed, sanitized, and quietly quarantined by Unity historical oversight. Anomalies, they said. Misclassifications, naturally occurring coincidence. But Sarah had seen too much. She returned without clearance. Her position as junior analyst had no authority to act alone, but no one had tried to stop her. Perhaps the administration didn't want to know what else she might find. The human village was unchanged. Children laughed under solar drapes, elders sat weaving sky patterns into cloth, and someone was always singing. There was no ceremony in her return, no acknowledgement of her absence, as if she'd never left. The elder sat beneath the tall starfruit tree, exactly where she remembered. He was older now, though logically he should not be. His eyes, still sharp, followed her as she approached. "You came back," he said. "I had to," she replied. She sat beside him in silence for several breaths. The air smelled of warm soil and distant rain. Then she asked plainly, "Why didn't you tell us who you are? What you were?" The elder gave a small smile and tilted his face toward the suns. "We didn't hide," he said. "You simply stopped asking questions you weren't ready to understand." Sarah closed her eyes. That answer should have frustrated her. Instead, it felt like gravity. It didn't argue. It simply existed. In the weeks following the vault's discovery, unclassified signals had begun pulsing from forgotten systems. World after world, long considered barren, suddenly displayed signs of buried energy grids reactivating. Monitoring posts blinked to life with data pings from languages unspoken for millennia. Not invasions, not warnings, just signals. Remembering. One planet, thought to be a failed terraform project, was revealed to be a sanctuary biosphere preserving extinct flora from dozens of ancient worlds. Another had rotating crystalline towers aligned with long-dead stars, broadcasting old songs into space. Each world bore the same symbol, A seed within an eye. Unity scientists, forced to reckon with what they could no longer ignore, proposed the unthinkable, that humanity had not only come first, but had engineered the galaxy's awakening, that they had spread knowledge and language, uplifted early species, perhaps even designed ecosystems, not to rule but to cultivate. And then, for reasons unknown, they disappeared, or rather they chose to become invisible. Some believed it was due to catastrophe, others suspected guilt. Still others, like Sarah, began to consider something else entirely. Perhaps humanity had simply let go. The Carthan Senate fractured. Debates raged across academic and political spheres. Was this a threat? A test? Should these hidden humans be contained? Honored? Feared? But the humans themselves made no demands. They claimed no territory, sought no reparations. They answered questions with kindness, offered stories when asked, and disappeared quietly when pushed too far. Across the galaxy, these enclaves surfaced not to disrupt but to witness, not to take back, but to illuminate what had always been present. In the village, under the fruit tree, Sarah finally understood. First contact, she said softly, wasn't with a new species. It was with our forgotten beginning. The elder chuckled. A seed doesn't ask to be remembered. It only waits for the right soil. Sarah turned to him. Will you ever tell the others the full story? He nodded once. When they stop needing an answer and start seeking understanding. She stayed another 3 days. No formal interviews, no data collection. She watched the sky change colors in ways no spectrum analyzer could capture. She learned songs with no lyrics. She helped plant a tree whose roots would take 2 lifetimes to fully awaken. Then she returned to orbit. The transport lifted without ceremony. As it ascended, the stars began to shimmer, not with movement, but with meaning. The old map she'd studied all her life was no longer fixed. It was not the stars that changed, but her eyes. From the bridge viewport, she saw the signal begin. A low-frequency pulse spread from the planet in gentle concentric waves, harmless, elegant, ancient. It didn't trigger alarms. It didn't ask for acknowledgement. It simply existed. Across the galaxy, systems long thought dead began to hum again. In quiet corners, sensors lit up. Stone circles vibrated with energy. Forgotten AI cores whispered to life, repeating names no longer found in databases. The Carthans called it a reactivation. The humans called it remembering. No fleet moved, no flag rose, and yet the shape of galactic history shifted. The humans were always here. They had simply been waiting to be seen.